The hall remained silent, the gravity unmistakable. Delegates exchanged glances, some stunned, others visibly moved. Social media across Africa exploded immediately, capturing and dissecting every word. This, however, was only the beginning. The implications of Traoré's message would soon expand far beyond the G20 stage, rippling across the continent, and the tension inside the G20 hall was unmistakable as Ibrahim Traoré continued speaking. Every sentence landed with calculated precision. His eyes remained locked on President Ramaphosa, not with anger for its own sake, but with a firm demand for accountability. What unfolded was far beyond standard diplomacy. It was a defining moment of conviction. Delegates leaned forward, sensing that this young leader from Burkina Faso was reshaping the expectations of African representation on the global stage. His critique of trade deals and debt negligence resonated strongly with several African delegates who had watched their own economies struggle under similar conditions. When Traoré referenced countries like Burkina Faso, Zambia, and Nigeria as examples of policies that favored Western powers, many in the room nodded quietly in agreement. Observers from civil society and youth organizations seated in the hall appeared visibly moved. To them, Traoré represented a voice long missing, a leader unafraid to speak against structural imbalances that had harmed the continent for decades. His message was clear. Africa's progress could not be built on agreements that weakened local industries and reinforced dependency. As Traoré spoke, African news outlets began broadcasting key excerpts in real time. Analysts quickly highlighted the significance of what they were witnessing. Many described the speech as evidence of a growing divide between African leaders aligned with Western partnerships and those advocating for a more assertive, independent path. Traoré's call for coordinated action through the African Union struck a deep chord. His emphasis on fair management of natural resources, resistance to unilateral concessions, and the need for autonomous African policymaking signaled a shift many had long hoped for. It was a message that resonated beyond borders. From West African youth movements to Central African political commentators, inside the hall, the silence was punctuated only by the scribbling of notes and whispered conversations between diplomats. Traoré's accusations were not philosophical abstractions. They were grounded in real consequences: energy dependency, mineral exploitation, and widespread corruption. His clarity made the critique impossible to dismiss. Ramaphosa, known for his composure, appeared unusually reflective. For the first time, he seemed to grasp the political weight of Traoré's words. It was clear that the speech had struck deeper than anyone expected. Beyond political offices and media studios, ordinary citizens felt empowered. In Burkina Faso, community groups began demanding more accountability from local officials. Grassroots organizations launched new initiatives focusing on good governance, public transparency, and fair distribution of national resources. Across West Africa, young activists created online forums and campaigns calling for democratic reforms, economic equity, and an end to unchecked foreign exploitation. The speech had ignited something. Deeper than a political response, it had awakened a sense of ownership and possibility among everyday people. Internationally, think tanks in Washington, Brussels, and Paris held emergency discussions about how Traoré's stance could alter the continent's geopolitical landscape. Analysts noted that a leader from a smaller nation had successfully shifted the direction of one of the world's largest economic gatherings. It was a message the world could not ignore. Traoré had challenged not just Ramaphosa, not just Western governments, but an entire system that had shaped Africa's global position for decades. The effects of that challenge were now spreading, reshaping policies, inspiring movements, and pushing Africa toward a new and more independent era. And this was still only the beginning. The influence of Ibrahim Traoré's G20 speech quickly expanded beyond Burkina Faso, reaching communities across West and Central Africa. Grassroots organizations, civil society networks, and youth movements began forming new alliances, all centered on the principles he championed: fair trade, resource sovereignty, and transparent governance. In Burkina Faso, the public response was immediate and energetic. Town halls, classrooms, and community centers were filled with discussions about how the country could strengthen its economy, reclaim local industries, and ensure fair distribution of national wealth. Citizens who had long felt marginalized in global decision-making suddenly sensed a renewed sense of agency. For the first time in years, many felt that their leader's voice represented their daily struggles and aspirations. The emphasis on fair trade agreements resonated deeply. Activists pushed for audits of existing contracts with multinational companies, especially those involved in mining and natural resource extraction. Calls for transparency grew louder, urging governments across Africa to negotiate deals that genuinely benefited local communities, rather than foreign corporations. Youth movements played a key role. Inspired by Traore's courage, students and young professionals launched campaigns promoting political reform, civic responsibility, and stronger regional cooperation. Social media platforms became hubs of intellectual debate and activism, spreading the message far beyond national borders. These movements recognized that Africa's future depended on leaders willing to resist external pressure and prioritize the continent's long-term development. Politically, governments across West and Central Africa felt compelled to reassess their diplomatic strategies. Traore's insistence on aligning national policies with African Union goals encouraged a shift toward collective negotiations. Leaders who previously made unilateral concessions began acknowledging the importance of regional consensus. It became clear that fragmented policies had weakened Africa's bargaining power for decades. This sparked significant debate among political elites. Some accused Traoré of provoking unnecessary tension with Western nations, warning that such bold rhetoric could strain aid and investment agreements. Others defended him, arguing that maintaining the status quo only ensured continued dependency and underdevelopment. For many Africans watching the debate unfold, Traoré's stance represented long-needed honesty, a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths for the sake of future generations. International observers were equally attentive. Analysts in Europe and the United States noted the shift in tone across African capitals. They recognized that Traoré's speech had not been an isolated moment, it was part of a larger awakening across the continent. African nations were beginning to question long-standing economic structures, many of which had disproportionately benefited foreign powers. Yet the most profound impact of Traoré's message was felt not in diplomatic circles, but among ordinary citizens. People began demanding accountability with renewed determination. Grassroots transparency initiatives emerged, focusing on public spending and local governance. Communities created forums to track mining contracts, monitor government promises, and support local entrepreneurs. Across the continent, Africa's youth felt a surge of hope. Traoré had given language to their frustrations and aspirations. He had shown that fearless leadership could alter the balance of power and force global institutions to acknowledge Africa's rightful place at the table. The momentum was building, and with every passing day, Traoré's influence reached deeper into Africa's political consciousness. The stage was now set for the next wave of transformation, one that would challenge global norms and push Africa toward a new era of unity and self-determination. She once told me something I'll never forget. People don't leave because they stop loving you. They leave because they no longer recognize themselves while loving you. At that moment, her words hit me harder than the silence that followed. I realized that sometimes love becomes a mirror that reflects not who we are, but who we are forced to become. Maybe that's where everything between us slowly cracked. Not because our hearts changed, but because the versions of us that loved each other were no longer the same versions surviving reality. Life does that. It reshapes people. It pushes them into corners where they must choose between holding on and saving themselves. And she chose herself. I don't blame her anymore, because healing taught me something too. When someone walks away, you don't lose them. You rediscover yourself. I'm still learning how to breathe without her presence, how to stand without her voice anchoring me. But I've finally stopped searching for the person I used to be. Now I'm becoming someone new, not to replace her, but to finally meet myself. The strange thing about healing is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in small, unexpected moments. Like waking up one morning and realizing the first thought in your mind wasn't her name anymore. It comes when you walk past a place that used to hold both of your memories, and your heart doesn't stumble the way it used to. It comes the day you finally understand that losing someone doesn't mean you failed. It only means their chapter in your story was never meant to be the final one. For a long time, I thought love was about holding on, about fighting until your hands bled, until your heart broke in ways no one could see. But now, I'm learning that real love sometimes means letting go with grace and keeping only the parts that made you wiser, softer, deeper. I'm not angry at her anymore. I'm not angry at myself either. Some people arrive to show you warmth and leave to show you strength. She did both, and even though her absence still echoes through certain corners of my life, I no longer fear the silence it leaves behind, because silence is where I finally hear myself. There comes a point in every heartbreak where the pain stops feeling like a storm and starts feeling like a season, something temporary, something you learn to live through, something that eventually passes, even if it leaves the world looking different afterward. I reached that point slowly, almost quietly. One day I noticed I wasn't checking my phone for a message that would never come. I wasn't replaying old conversations, trying to understand something that no longer needed answers. I wasn't looking for her shadows in places she used to stand. I was just living, not perfectly, not fearlessly, but honestly. That's when I realized healing doesn't look like forgetting. It looks like remembering without collapsing. It looks like carrying the past without letting it crush the present. I still think of her sometimes, not with longing, not with anger, but with a soft gratitude for the person I became after surviving the loss of someone I once thought I couldn't live without. Life is strange like that. It breaks you open, only to rebuild you into someone you were always meant to become. And for the first time in a long time, I'm starting to feel proud of who I'm becoming. There's a quiet kind of strength that grows after you've lost someone you never imagined losing. It doesn't show up with loud victories or sudden confidence. It arrives slowly, in small choices, in subtle shifts, in the way you start trusting life again. Even when you don't fully understand it, I began noticing it in the little moments, like the way I started opening the curtains again, to let the sunlight in, even on days when it felt too bright, for the pieces of me still learning to heal, or the way I stopped blaming myself for the things I couldn't control, the timing, the misunderstandings, the unspoken fears that slowly pulled us apart. For the longest time, I carried the weight of what if. What if I tried harder? What if I loved better? What if I changed more? But healing taught me something gentle and true. You cannot save what is not meant to stay, and you should never shrink yourself just to fit into someone's fading comfort. So I stopped asking, why did she leave? And started asking, what is life trying to teach me through this? That question hurt at first, but every honest answer built a new part of me, a wiser part, a quieter part, a stronger part. And maybe that's the real purpose of heartbreak. Not to destroy you, but to introduce you to the version of yourself you were always meant to meet. There's a moment in healing when the memories stop hurting the way they used to. They don't disappear. They simply lose their sharp edges. I felt that moment on a random evening, the kind of evening that doesn't feel important until it becomes a turning point. I came across an old picture of us, not on purpose, just one of those photos that hides itself deep in your gallery and resurfaces when you least expect it. For a second, I braced myself for the familiar ache, the rush of emotions, the heaviness that usually followed. But it didn't come. Instead, I just looked at it, softly, quietly, and realized something profound. I'm no longer wishing to go back to the person I was when that photo was taken. That version of me loved deeply, but he also lived in fear.